You are now listening to Talk Your Jits podcast.
Welcome back to the Talk Your Jits podcast. This podcast is, as the name implies, all about Jiu Jitsu. I'm your host, Lamar Smith, and today's guest is a blue belt who trains at 10th Planet Dallas, located in Dallas, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, Drew Welty.
Hi.
Hello, sir.
How you doing?
Pretty good, man. How are you doing this morning?
Doing good. Excited to talk to you. This is it's not something I've done before about Jiu Jitsu, so it'll be interesting.
Cool, man. First and foremost, man, I would like to, extend my thanks for you to take some time out and doing this episode with me today. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to support the community and stuff like that. I think it's a really cool thing. The more that people talk about Jiu Jitsu, the more people that do it. So it's good for everybody if we do this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, man, without further ado, man, if you want to formally introduce yourself again, by all means, and let's hear your Jiu Jitsu journey.
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, my name is Drew. My journey is kind of a up and down one with Jiu Jitsu. I think it really starts with me being a pretty young kid, and really being one of those kids that really likes roughhousing and wrestling and stuff like that. I've always been a rather large guy, even when I was young. And so I think my parents were always very hesitant to allow me to be doing that kind of roughhousing. And so I think I always had this energy of like wanting to have some sort of physical sport, some sort of contact sport that was resisted for a long time because I was a large kid and there was like a worry that I was going to hurt people and stuff. So for a long time, I never did any contact sports. And eventually I'm allowed to do flag football. And then eventually I'm allowed to do football. And I gradually decide more and more that I'm not a very fast person. And so any sport that is purely focused on running or there's like a lot of running involved, I'm always going to be at a disadvantage. But I always was really into contact. And so I ended up breaking my leg one year when I was a freshman in high school, in between the summer of freshman and sophomore year. And so that sort of threw me out of football for my high school career. And so when I restarted, I decided I wanted to do MMA. My parents wouldn't let me do that. And so I ended up doing wrestling in high school. Mm-hmm. And so for 3 years I wrestled, learned how much of a hell that combat sports and wrestling can be. And so I sort of developed a love-hate relationship with it. And then after that, went to college, no sports or anything like that. And then I had a cousin reach out to me later in life and ask me, he's like, "You were a wrestler, right?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay, well, do you want to try to join and do some jiu-jitsu? I think you'd be really good at it. You got wrestling experience. You've got some experience fooling around with some submissions with friends, just strangling each other for fun and stuff." And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And so went and did a trial class at 10th Planet. At the time, it was called 10th Planet North Dallas, not just 10th Planet Dallas. And I went and did a trial class there and got the crap strangled out of me by a purple belt 100 pounds lighter than me. And I was like, okay, so I'm pretty much hooked on this. The moment that nailed it in the coffin for me was he took my back and I went to defend my neck because intuitively I knew that it's not good if someone gets their arm around my neck, and he trapped my arm with his leg, which is a very common move these days. But at the time, I had never seen anything like that before. And he strangled me. And I asked him about it afterwards. Like, "You were doing that to prevent me from protecting my neck, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, so I'm signing up for this tomorrow because that's like the coolest thing I've ever seen." So as soon as I went, I mean, I had a sore trachea for a week, but I had to go back. I just fell in love with it immediately.
And, yeah, man. Yeah.
And so I've been training at 10th Planet Dallas for 2.5 years now. I think I got my blue belt in about 8 months. I was hitting it really, really hard my first year because I was in grad school and I had the time to be there a lot, and just really got invested in it. And with my previous wrestling experience, I pretty much throttled my first tournament in the white belt section. And so I ended up getting promoted pretty quickly, and I've just been sitting pretty at blue belt for a while now. So it's been good. It's been a fantastic experience.
That's cool, man. That's cool. So how has it been, like, I guess, with training, like, if from wrestling to jujitsu? So
Um,
I usually don't get to ask wrestlers this question. Like,
yeah.
how has that pace, the change of pace been?
Um, it's very different in some ways. Obviously, there's a lot of carryover in terms of just I don't know if it's sort of like movement IQ or something like that. You just sort of have an
Mm-hmm.
intuitive understanding of scrambles a little bit more than like your average person.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started in wrestling, I believe I did folk style wrestling in high school, which basically means you being on your back is essentially you've lost the match,
Right.
which means turning onto your stomach is actually the safe play when you hit the floor. And so when I first started, I had to unlearn turning onto my stomach because there was a period of time for the first couple of weeks where every time I would make it to the floor, I would immediately give up my back and get strangled. So
Mm-hmm.
so intuitively, a lot of my instincts were wrong for the first couple of weeks. You learn pretty quickly not to do that because it hurts really bad getting the crap strangled out of you all the time. But so there's that for sure. Also, the pacing is for sure different. I also learned pretty quickly that I had to be careful with people. One of my first experiences in jiu-jitsu in the first couple of weeks was um, everybody knew I was a wrestler, so nobody stood up with me. And then I would end up in a situation where every now and then someone would stand up with me. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to wrestle. And there was a time where I hip tossed this guy really bad and cracked him on the floor hard. And I was like, okay, so that was out of line, and I can't do that in here because it's like you're wrestling with people who just don't know how to defend themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
you can hurt people. And I'm a big dude. I'm like 6'5", 300 pounds, and so I
Oh,
am.
you're a giant.
So yeah, I'm a really big guy. So you have to, you sort of have to develop a different understanding because in a wrestling gym, they just don't care if you're rough with people, but if you're in a like a club setting where people are paying to be there and they're just some of them are hobbyists and stuff like that, you have to learn to be careful with your intensity because you
Yeah.
can really throw people a lot harder than you ever would in a wrestling gym because in a wrestling gym they know how to prevent themselves from having that happen. So I think the intensity you just have to really match with the person with you're at, because if you go in the gym with the wrestling intensity against people that are just there to kind of have fun, go to get a workout, you're gonna get kicked out of the gym if you do it too much.
Yeah.
I would also say though, one of the things I learned in wrestling was that for me, the best thing that I could do for myself was to just pick a couple techniques that are really, really solid fundamental techniques. And for me and wrestling, that was just like working really, really hard on a power half sequence to pin people rather than doing fancy stuff. And so
Mm-hmm.
intuitively, I knew when I went into jiu-jitsu, my strategy is going to be I'm going to pick a couple really solid fundamental things and just work on those rather than trying to do fancy silly sweeps and like asylum guard and all just like all sorts of stuff. Like that's all fine and good and it's fun, but I wanted to get good fast, and I knew that to do that I needed to work on fundamentals. And so I had like
Mm-hmm.
some weaknesses and some good insight on how to start too. So it's good going into jiu-jitsu as a wrestler. I think the biggest thing is just knowing how to stand up in your first tournament when no one else has to do that. But it's
Mm-hmm.
good. I liked having the wrestling experience going in.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people should take in consideration as as wrestlers when they come into jujitsu, because yeah, like you said, you have to match that intensity, because
Yeah.
if the difference between, like, a wrestling school or a jujitsu school, if you're at a wrestling school, you're usually there for the intensity and for to wrestle.
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to run into like a few people that's going to be hobbyists in that type of
No.
in that type of sport. It's very, very rare.
Yeah.
So with jiu-jitsu, you get a plethora of everybody. Like I
Hmm.
said, you get the hobbyists, you get the competitors, you get this, you get that, you get this, and if you don't know, then, like, your instinct is to go like the arms up, I'm going to shoot this double leg, or I'm going to shoot to the back
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
do or hit him with a fireman's carry. So, like, you don't think about that stuff in the moment until it's like you hear that thud. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
do
It's
that.
especially bad for me because uh, because I was a heavyweight in wrestling, I was never a crazy fast guy. And so I was never shooting for people's legs or going underneath them to try to do stuff. I was primarily upper body takedowns, which means like a lot of throws and stuff. And so you just have to be careful with throws against people that have never been thrown before. People can hurt themselves doing that. So in competition, I do that all the time, but I try to be really careful with my teammates. It is a good thing because in jiu-jitsu, there's a different risk associated with shooting for the legs than in wrestling, because in wrestling you get sprawled on, and jiu-jitsu you get your neck taken and guillotined through the roof. But yeah, you're right. You have to match intensity. And so that's something that I learned very quickly, is because I didn't want to develop a reputation for being a jerk in the gym, because I'm already too big for most people to want to roll with. And so if I'm not a good roll and I'm too rough with people, then I don't get to get better. So I had to be really restrained in a lot of my roles. And I've learned how to do that these days. So it's good. It helps a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And, going back to what you were saying about, like, people don't know how to protect themselves when they're getting thrown. One thing that we've done when I first started training, but we kind of like slacked off a little bit, because at one point we had just a lot of just upper belts.
Yeah.
A lot of like blues and purples and browns or whatever. But now we're predominantly white belts now. There's a lot of white belts. It's just me and one other guy who's a brown belt. We have a purple belt. I think 2 blue belts, and I think the rest is like white belts. Yeah. So we're so used to being like, okay, everyone's a blue belt. We know what we're going to do. Let's just go. And we have to go. I'm like, okay, now we have to slow down now, because we have to go back to like the break falls and, getting used to.
And they're like, what's
that moment?
What's the side control? And you're like, oh crap, we need to
right. So it's like, we're getting people coming in and they're like, wanting to roll, and we're like calling out stuff, and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. We like, we have to go back to the basics.
I feel like it's a good sign of health when a gym has a lot of white belts. It's just, I feel like it's just good for a gym to have a lot of new people learning and stuff like that. And even if they're not the same white belts over time, I feel like that's the life of the gym, is the people learning at the bottom. And it sharpens everybody else, because everybody else is teaching and helping them while they're drilling. And like, no, this goes here, that goes there. And so it makes everybody better when you've got a lot of new guys and teaching the material and stuff. It's really important, I think.
Yeah. And what I like about what you just said about, everyone's teaching, I was having a conversation with my wife. She trains, and she, we were like talking about like how she's like, you look natural when you're teaching people. When someone asks you a question, you're like, you're on it. And I was like, ironically, everyone does it. We just do it in our own way. Like, when you're sitting there, you're helping a lower ranked person adjust themselves or, fix their posture. That's still teaching them.
Yeah.
And it's good. Like when you walking around the room and you're just hearing everybody, like, helping everybody and, fixing techniques and fixing this and fixing that. I'm like, everyone's a teacher in some magnitude, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's as simple as like, I am a blue belt and I'm with the new guy and we're drilling, and I'm able to comprehend the flow that our coach just showed better. And so I can remember it. And then we're training, and I'm like, no, remember, this is the part we're at. And just reminding them that so they can keep track of things. I'm still helping them a lot, because they're actually, if they were with another white belt, they may miss an entire important part of what's going on. And so, people put too much emphasis, I think, on like, you should never give advice or teach below whatever belt. And I feel like that's a mistake, like as long as we're approaching it in a humble attitude, like I'm a blue belt explaining what I think about this, and I'm not the same as coach telling you this. I think it's important for the development of everybody that everybody's trying to do that. Teaching makes you way better by trying to do that, as long as you've got good information and you're not being arrogant and stupid. So it's an important thing for the gym.
And I love that. I love that dynamic, because I'm a pretty honest person. I've been teaching since I've been teaching since I was a blue belt, and I'll admit when I can't do stuff. Like if someone come to me and be like, hey, I've been trying to work this XYZ, I would be like, look, I have no idea. Like,
Right.
I'm like, you can show me what you do know. We can try to break it down. But like, just say, for example, if there's a certain type of takedown, I'm like, I don't know that. Hey, Drew,
Yeah.
come help them, blah, blah, blah. I don't mind being the student to a lower belt.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
I mean,
it's a different perspective than what I have.
right. Yeah. I mean, it just makes sense to do that, right? Like we all have our different areas of passion. And so, if I'm in class and someone comes up to me afterwards, they're not going to ask me the rubber guard questions, right? Like
No.
that's just not my game. And, like they might ask me about arm triangles because I could talk about that all day, but they're going to ask somebody who actually rocks rubber guard for the questions about rubber guard. And that just makes sense for everybody. Even if I'm better than the guy that does rubber guard, he knows rubber guard better. So like, why would we do this silly thing? Even if I'm a higher belt than that guy, it doesn't even make sense. Like if you have something you're passionate about, you're studying it more. So you're going to know all the pathways. You're actually running it. You know that their arm needs to go this way. If their posture gets down this way, you've got this opening. It's just a matter of specialization in like everyday life. Like, I mean, it makes more sense for us to specialize in things and then take from each other as specializing. And that's why we have different jobs in real life, and not everybody farms their own food and does all that these days. Cause then like we're all bad at everything instead of good at one thing. So it just works the same way in the gym. It's just one of the many correlates for the gym and life. So.
Yeah. And I love that about jiu-jitsu. Definitely love that about jiu-jitsu. Cause like right now, I have, we haven't started just yet, but I had I got offered a position to teach at another school.
Okay.
So this would be like from the ground up. So I'm like, this is about to be wild. Because I'm used to teaching, friends and people who's been around for a minute. These are gonna be like just fresh new bodies and eyes. I'm like, oh man.
So much potential though, like because if you're building something from the ground up, I mean, you could build a whole curriculum and get people started off, and that's just so awesome to be able to do that. It's you can really see the growth of people over time. One of the coolest things that I ever see in jiu-jitsu is just the growth of people. Like, I mean, there are people in the gym because I've been there long enough that like I know I was there on their first day and they couldn't move, and now they are like scary on the mat, and it's like it's just so cool to see that. It's just amazing. I was rolling with a guy the other day that I started with, I was there probably a year and a half before he was, and he was giving me a hard roll, and I just wasn't expecting it out of him. And I was telling him afterwards, I was like, man, you feel amazing. Like you're scary now. Like you used to be like a fish, and you were just a killer now. It's just crazy. It's amazing how much a beginner can change in a really short amount of time if they're just showing up to class and they're digesting everything. So it's really cool. That's one of the coolest things. That white belt period of like 0 days to a year is just insane growth. And so it's really cool to see and build that from the start. Yeah.
We, cause one of our more recent white belts, his name is Zach, young guy. I think he's like 17. Like when he came in, he was, everyone comes in quiet. Everyone comes in like, shy. But man, it was just like, we blinked and this dude is he's a beast. Like he's getting he's getting better really, really quick. I mean, that's given because there's so many upper belts around him. But just as like you said, just to see that person's growth, like you'll notice someone else's progression faster than you notice your own.
Yeah.
So, because me and him was rolling Thursday, and I was starting to realize like I'm not slacking on this guy no more.
Yeah.
Like I can't play around with him anymore. Like, there's some stuff that he still needs to learn to understand, but he's going for like twisters and all this other stuff. And I'm like, whoa, you gotta chill, bro. like you dare try to put me in a twister, but
oh man, that's the best moment ever when you're rolling with somebody that in the past you can kind of play around with. You're giving them a good look, but you're not killing them or going after them. And then you're doing that same thing with them and then they're like, I'm going to try to hit you with the backwards magician. And you're like, whoa. Like, this is not the kind of roll you think it is, brother. And now you're actually trying to not get submitted by some goofy shit.
Cause like, I'm trying to remember how he even, no. So so I had his back. He got out, he was in my guard, and he was going for a guard pass. And I guess the way I turned, he swooped out the back, got my back. And I'm like, okay, so I'm just gonna play around and see what he does.
Yeah.
And when I noticed his body started to shift a certain type of way, I was like, oh, he's trying to set up a body triangle. I mean, he's trying to set up a body triangle. And then he shifted again. And he got my leg, and I was like, are you going for a twister? Oh no, sir. Like, no, good try.
Yeah. Man, no, that's a quick way to get attacked.
I was like, okay, now we got to. Now we got to
turn it up. We're going up to I'm not letting this happen. Not today. Not happening.
Yeah, man. But it's very cool to see that, man. Like, just like I said, just people's progression from how they handle techniques, how they learn, how they evolve as a person and as a whole.
Yeah.
Because right, like I said, when people walk in, they're just another person off the street. You walk up, you shake their hand, you introduce yourself, blah blah blah. Next thing you know, they're like family.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a little brother now.
Yeah.
Comes in, we talk, we can get picked on, we roll, and go on about our day.
Yeah. So. I think it's one of the coolest parts about jiu-jitsu is that there's so much more to it than just the jiu-jitsu. Like, it's really an amazing community. Like, it's not often that you get to have like exercise and then like growth over time, community, sort of a competitive outlet. You get all these like amazing things in sort of a one-stop shop. One of the coolest things about 10th Planet that I just love is that all the gyms are connected. Like, if I'm, because I'm a member in Dallas, if I'm in Atlanta with family, I can drop in at the Atlanta gym with the 10th Planet guys there, and there's no drop-in fee or anything like that. You're just another 10th Planet dude there, and it's this like worldwide community of like just really supportive people that are all part of the same community. We had a guy at our gym who's from Australia the other day, and just came in, like, was just like happy to see 10th Planet Dallas and see what it was like. It's just so cool to have the community be so supportive. And even outside the gym, we just recently moved gyms, and we had a gym that's just like met our coach a couple times at some competitions. He was like, if your gym's down, your entire gym can come to my gym for free just to train. Just because y'all are in between gyms and stuff. We want to support y'all. It's just amazing to see like the support and the love that the community has the vast majority of the time. It's not always the case, but the vast majority of the time it feels like it's just such a positive community of people. It's so good to see.
Yeah, I have been fortunate enough to not to run into any bad apples when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Like, I've been very, very fortunate. Everybody that I've talked to, it has been very, very, warm, welcoming, and whatnot. And I absolutely love it, because it's just been like, recently I started trying to visit other gyms, other jiu-jitsu gyms. And I was having this conversation with my instructor when I, first decided to do it. It's like you're going to talk to your parents about, going on your first date type deal.
Yeah.
So, I put him to the side. I was like, I think I want to visit other schools. And he's like, okay. But he just gave me like the rundown of like, what to watch out for, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Because like you hear about the McDojos, or like the schools that don't want you to visit because they don't want you, stealing their techniques or try to, recruit students and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, I just want to roll with some bodies without having to pay $70-$80 for a tournament. I'll gladly pay this, $10, $15, $25 drop-in fee, meet some new people, gain some more family and learn jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So. I think, the only issue I think that some of our guys run into, like, so we're no-gi exclusively, right? And so
Right.
We've got to find gyms that are both like cool with no gi and aren't like weird about it, but also our gym doesn't have like submission restrictions. So like if you come in and day one we're learning about leg locks, you could be like day 2, 3 white belt and you're like learning heel hook entries and stuff like that. We don't care. Like as long as you're taking care of your teammates, like we'll tell you like, hey, be careful, and you need to tap early on this, and you need to be mindful of not cranking on this because you can hurt people. But we don't like treat people like, oh, this is like some special thing you have to be here for 12 months to do. And so, I mean, we had one of our white belts drop in at a place, and he electric chaired one of their black belts, and he got furious and like stomped off and like yelling at him for doing that as a white belt, and our white belt just had to leave because he like the coach basically kicked him out for electric chairing him, and I'm like, that's just embarrassing, man. Like like you're gonna make yourself look goofy in front of your whole school because you got electric chaired by a white belt. I don't know. It's just wild to me. So we have to be careful with the culture stuff, just because like we have a different culture. We're cool with everything. We like to learn from everything. And as long as you're taking care of everybody, like, I mean, they don't care. You can cover each other's mouths. You can smother people. You can do wrist lock. They just don't care as long as you're being safe. And not every gym's like that. I mean, we have a black belt at our place that is in love with wrist locks. He just has this passion for wrist locks because he's a goofy person. And
I don't like him.
Yeah, he's a goofy person. And he's got a wrist lock for all these weird situations. And so half the time I tap to this guy, it's because I didn't realize that if I move my arm across his belly, he has this random wrist lock that he's done never before to me. So, but he was trying to mess around with some guy that just dropped in at our gym and was wrist locking him and stuff like that. And the guy like lost his shit because it's apparently disrespectful at his gym if you get somebody attempting wrist locks on you. But that's just on, right? So it's like, it's just you gotta be careful with culture differences. But other than that, it's a good community and stuff. So we try to be careful going into other people's gyms so that we don't piss them off and stuff.
Yeah, that's me to the end, dude. Like I would, if I go visit another school, I as soon as I get on the mats, slap bump, introduce myself, and even before we get started, what's ailing you? What is what's to look out for? What not to touch? Blah blah blah. Because I don't want to come off as that person. Because like you said, not every school teaches wrist locks or heel hooks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I found that weird. Like I found that very, very weird when I found that out as a white belt. Like they don't teach everybody everything. Like they feel like you should learn wrist or ankle manipulation until like blue belt. But I'm sitting here teaching it to the kids class.
Yeah.
So
it's this weird thing too, because there's a lot of gyms that are catching on in this day and age. Like, okay, like leg locks are just a part of the game now. And if you're not doing that, you're just not teaching half of jiu-jitsu these days. But it's weird because like it feels like, even though a lot of the gyms have started to catch up, not everybody, but a lot of the tournament rule sets have not caught up. Like there's just a lot of tournaments that we've had several people get DQ'd for reaping at places and stuff like that. There's like weird rule sets where if you are a particular belt level, if you're not like a brown or a black belt, if somebody forces your leg across their hip and forces you into a reap, that'll DQ you, which is just crazy. I mean, this
crazy.
This is like ancient dinosaur stuff that this is still allowed, right? So, I mean, we had a teammate of mine recently who competed. I think it was like a submission hunter or something like that. The rule set that was posted was no heel hooks, no slams, everything else legal. That was like essentially the language. And he got DQ'd for reaping in that tournament. And he was like, he had a guy who he had him in a leg lock, and the guy intentionally pulled himself out of bounds to reset the thing to get out of the leg lock. And that's perfectly in the rules in this tournament. Apparently you can just run out of bounds to try to get out of submissions, but then he gets into a reaping situation. He gets DQ'd. It's just like the rule sets are really frustrating for competition because competition matters a lot for people that like are competitive people. And if it's the case that I can't use this half of my game in competition because I'm not a particular belt level or something like that, it actually incentivizes me to not study particular parts of jiu-jitsu in the gym because I'm wasting my time for competition. And so in my opinion, like as long as competitions have rules like this that prevent, they're incentivizing old jiu-jitsu. They're incentivizing just antiquated ways of thinking about things, because it's just a fact of the matter that if I'm getting ready for a tournament that doesn't allow leg locks, I am actually wasting my time studying heel hooks, which sucks because that's part of jiu-jitsu and I want to study that, but I can't do that if I'm prepping for a tournament that's not like that. So I think we're moving towards our as a gym towards not supporting tournaments that are like that, just because it just prevents us from doing good jiu-jitsu because it incentivizes us not to study.
Because I think grappling industries just updated their rule sets too. They're a little bit more lenient on like white belts doing like specific ankle and wrist locks. I don't remember exactly what they changed. But the last grappling industries we was at, one of our white belts competed for the first time, and guy goes for, did he go for a triangle? I want to say the guy went for a triangle or something of the sort. And our white belt, Matt, he goes for a can opener. So he goes for the can opener and he switched it to like an Ezekiel. And they're like, no, you can't do that. And we're like, wait, what? Like, no, you can't pull on the head and punch down. Like, that's a neck crank. That's illegal at white belt. And we're like, what? Okay, whatever. So I'm like, it's like you said, it's a part of jiu-jitsu. You're especially like I said, as a competitor, you want to be you want to be well-rounded as much as possible. You don't want to go in thinking that I have limitations on what I can do, because some things that might be quote unquote banned fits your game. So it's like, now I got to learn something completely different than what I'm used to. That takes the love out of it to me.
I had a really tough match with a guy probably a month and a half ago at a tournament, and he ended up taking me down. He had some good wrestling, and when you're underneath somebody in a heavyweight match and you're not allowed to reap and you're not allowed to do like a lot of the leg lock stuff, you've essentially turned it into a wrestling match with submissions, because a huge portion of jiu-jitsu just is illegal. I mean, there was times in that tournament where I was underneath him and I had to make the decision that I was going to have to stop manipulating with his legs, because I kept going up and habitually almost reaping. And I was like, I'm just going to get DQ'd if I do this. And so I just had to try to find another way, and it didn't end up going my way, and I ended up getting submitted. And it's just frustrating when I'm in a match and I have a tool that we're both clearly skilled enough to handle. This guy was clearly able to deal with like locks. It just wasn't allowed in the rule set. So it's just a weird thing. It's like we're gonna play Monopoly, but you can't buy this third of the properties. It's like, why? Like what is like? It's just messing with the game. Like why are we doing this? This is goofy.
So you can't buy Park Place.
Exactly. It's like let's play a different game then. Like why are we doing
right?
This?
Yeah. That's crazy, man. But like I said, it's slowly evolving, man. Evolving, and I'm hoping that jiu-jitsu continue to move in this right direction when it comes to these rule sets. Because you don't want to feel limited. You want to be able to do your best and know that I tried everything I know I could.
It feels bad to know that there was stuff left on the table that you could have tried to use that was not allowed. That sucks.
Right.
It doesn't feel as satisfying. If you lose and it's like, okay, I threw everything at it and there's nothing I could do, it's like, okay, then I just got some stuff to learn and I'll go work on this. But there's all these questions of like, what if this were allowed, and would I have been able to do anything about it? It's frustrating. I've been in that situation a couple times in tournaments like that, and it's annoying to me.
Yeah, no one wants to leave a match up to chance.
Yeah, up to
Yeah.
chance.
So
I also feel that this is sort of more complicated, but the whole points thing in jujitsu is it's not something we train for in my gym. We're a submission only gym, and so
you're right.
yeah, and so points are always this weird thing that we have a strange relationship with because we value hunting for the submission, but submissions are inherently risky because you have to give up some position to go for your submission. And like it's much
Hmm.
easier for me to sit and mount on top of you rather than step off for my arm triangle or go for my arm bar. So um, the incentivization of lazy jujitsu and non-submission based jujitsu because of the point system too, I think is something that worries me as well. Although that one I think is a little more complicated when we have a huge tournament. We're trying to make sure we have at least a final result, and we don't have time for overtime rounds for everybody. So that's a little bit more complicated problem to solve because I think I'd still prefer points over a ref deciding the match. But I
That
also
too.
dislike points very much. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Because yeah, like you said, like it takes the fight out of it. Because if I know for a fact that I'm training every single day,
hmm
sun up to sundown, and you're just working on control,
yeah,
and I lose to you because you've been transition the whole 5 minute match. So I'm like, man, you didn't even try to fight me.
yeah.
So,
It's a weird thing because it's and everybody that's like done jujitsu for a while, I think knows this, but a lot of our openings come from movement, right? So like
mhm.
if someone is just trying to hold you in side control, very different than if they're trying to pass or they're trying to
Yeah.
submit you or something like. So a lot of the space that's created in jujitsu comes from opportunities for where they're trying to pass, where they're trying to submit. And so if the incentives are the case that you don't have to do those things, it's going to turn into like the most boring match ever. And we're going to sit
Hmm.
in a position. I'm going to try to squirm out, and you're going to try to hold me as tight as you can because you have no incentive to progress. The only thing that matters is you're 3 points up and there's 2 minutes left. Like, so um, I think without that, people are pressured to actually try to submit people. And so it creates more fun jujitsu for both the competitor and the spectator. So I just yeah, I wish there was a perfect world for a rule set, but even and unfortunately, even no time limit submission only rule sets have huge problems too. So it's I don't know what the
Yeah.
perfect rule set would be. EBI is pretty good, but even that has problems with people stalling for overtime and stuff. So I don't know what maybe somebody will come up with the perfect rule set in the near future, but it doesn't appear that we have one right now.
Nah, I mean, because I was like, while you were talking, I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, what could be done for this? I'm like, nah, that will just cause this to go this, to do
Yeah,
this. You're gonna be here another 2 hours. So yeah,
yeah,
let's not do that. So
yeah. I think John Donner has a pretty good philosophy on it, which I think is that whatever rule set that is, it's never going to overpower the incentives of wanting to win, and so you need a cultural shift where people culturally value submission more than winning by points and stuff like that. And if the culture is the case that if it's the case like you and I roll, but this understanding of everybody is that I didn't actually beat you if I didn't submit you. If that's the attitude of the entire jiu-jitsu community, people will chase submissions regardless of the rule set. And so I
mhm.
think it's going to take cultural and social shift rather than just rule set shift. It's you got to create a culture where people value it, or it's just they're just going to try to chase the win.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the only way I know how to do jujitsu is, go for the kill.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not gonna
yeah,
like I'm not gonna sit here and stall out. I'm not gonna sit here and try to keep switching from position to position. Like no, once I get into jujitsu mode, I'm going to use jujitsu.
yeah,
I'm going to go for my submissions. I'm going to go for whatever I can to kill you
yeah,
in the lack of better words. But
yeah,
that's my goal. I'm not gonna just I want to hold you and I'm gonna move. And I'm gonna hold you. Then I'm gonna move. Like
yeah,
no, get off of me. I don't like
yeah.
to play like that.
It's fun, even when I was a wrestler, I didn't do that. I always over everything. I when I was a wrestler, all of my matches were won by pin. I never won by points. Number one, because to wrestle with you for the entire match and wait for the time to run out for points. So I just want to pin you and get it over with. But I also like the finality. I like the finality of it, right? Like to me, I haven't won. I know this is very not a wrestling attitude, but for me, I never felt like it was a win if I didn't pin somebody to the floor. Like I controlled you and I pinned you and you couldn't get out of it. Like that was always the peak of wrestling to me. And I think that's always going to be the peak of jiu-jitsu for me. Like I winning by points is just lame. So if there's not the finality of the submission, to me, it's not really like truly a finished match. But yeah, this is how it is.
Yeah, I want to if we go into like, to the time end, I want it to be a fight to the end.
Yeah.
Not like, a minute left, I'm just gonna hold. You're right. I want to just, scratches, just bruises and bust a lip. I want to go to war.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. You'll be tired afterwards, but I've lost matches to dudes much smaller than me like that, where they're like bloodbaths the whole time. But they're fun matches. It's fine. It's just the way it goes. So they're at least fun matches that I can look back on.
Because that's how we roll as at our school, man. We go. We don't try to kill each other, but like if we're rolling with clocks, we're gonna go. We're gonna go. We're gonna push that pace. We're gonna try to do the best we can and fight it to the end, man. We're not about to stall for time because we will restart. I'm like, no, we ain't doing this.
Yeah. In the gym,
that keep moving or get restarted.
Yeah, in the gym, that kind of hurts everybody a little bit. The only exception is sometimes like it's nice to have somebody bigger than you really just try to hold you down so you can work some of your escape game. But that's just like, I don't know. If someone just holds you down and you never get any good looks at anything else, it's kind of frustrating. But just got to take what you can get, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. So how often do you compete?
That depends. So with my current work and stuff like that, it's been a challenge I've been trying to balance everything. So when I was in grad school, getting my master's and stuff, I had a lot more time. And so I'd probably compete like 2-3 times a year, when I was doing that. Right now, I think this past year I probably competed 2 or 3 times as well. So I'd probably say every 3-4 months I get the itch for it. I'm often disappointed by the number of competitors that are in my brackets. So I prefer to have larger brackets, and we've been disappointed continually by rule sets and stuff. So I'm trying to be more selective about the tournaments that I go to, because I want to make sure that the tournaments are worth the money and the experience. Because often tournaments don't have many competitors, or the rule sets are weird or something like that. So we're trying to pick a couple formats that are good, and then I'll probably consistently go to those. I really like. I think Naga is probably my favorite right now out of those rule sets. If I were to pick a favorite, it'd probably actually just be like 10th Planet Austin does a format for Thursday night jiu-jitsus, which is basically just EBI. No time. It's like a time limit. All submissions legal, and if there's no submission, then it's EBI over time. And I think that's what I prefer. So. So I'll probably compete at one of those at some point when I can get off work and stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to compete probably somewhere between 3 and 4 times a year is my goal. I think I like to see growth in between tournaments. I don't like to just hit tournaments every other week. I like to make sure that like I lost for this reason, so I'm going to work on that over the next 4 months, and then see if I can hold up against resistance in a tournament setting with those new skills, and then get a couple more months to do the same thing. So that's kind of the way I approach competition right now. Yeah.
I'm not that avid of a competitor. I would like to be, but like you said, I love the experience. I want to be able to, go out there, win or lose, figure out what need to be fixed, and work on that until the next tournament.
Yeah, I also think it's just good. Good psychologically, like I think it's important to do uncomfortable things, and jiu-jitsu is an uncomfortable thing, but we get sort of comfortable with the discomfort. And I think that putting ourselves out there in a tournament setting puts us in the discomfort again. And I think that should be encouraged. Even if it's just every now and then. I think it makes you a better person having to cope with the nerves and the intensity of competition. You don't really capture. There's like a lot of lessons to be learned from combat sports, and you don't capture some of those lessons in the gym with your friends. Like you capture those really well when you are going into competition and you have a really hard match that you are really wanting to win and you push through and you end up winning it. Or you have a match where you go out and someone absolutely makes you look like a child and ragdolls you. It makes you really understand where you sit in the food chain. And I think that it's pretty important as a human being to learn those lessons. That carries outside of jiu-jitsu and stuff. And it's easy to get arrogant, like being a part of like a combat sport and messing up beginners all the time and stuff. So it's always a good reminder that you were never and will never be the biggest fish. And it's important to remember that. Yeah.
And I feel the same way about, on top of tournaments, cross-training,
Yeah.
Going to a different school. I mean, it's just like a tournament. It's more, easier on the pockets than, going to a tournament because you're there, you're going to roll with people. You're not waiting around for like 4 or 5 hours for your match to start. So, So, yeah. I go to one of a friend of mine's school, and they're in a heavy competition class.
Yeah.
And I'm having issues with some of their white belts, not technique wise, but just being able to keep up with the pace. Because they'll do 5 or 6 minute rounds, and they still can go another 10. Where over here, where I'm usually at, we go a couple minute rounds. It's like, yeah, I'm done. Like, gotta get used to that pace. But like you said, it definitely shows you that you're not the biggest fish.
Yeah, it's a good thing. There's a lot of good psychological lessons to be learned from jiu-jitsu, and a lot of good just a lot of good stuff. I also think that jiu-jitsu is important I think jiu-jitsu is great for stress relief, number one.
Yeah, of course.
Like one of the things that's something that there's this whole wing of like people that are really focused on mindfulness these days. And mindfulness is essentially the practice of like being in the present moment. And anxiety and depression, all these things, and play a lot into not being in the present moment. There's a lot of anxiety that comes from the potential of the future and these types of things. And so one of the ways that people try to get out of those things is like through a practice called grounding techniques. So some people will do things like take cold showers. People are doing these cold plunges these days and stuff like that. It's very difficult to be anxious like that when you're so cold you can't focus on anything. And I think another way to do that is to have a person on top of you trying to strangle you. It's very difficult to focus on the reports you have to do at work tomorrow when you're just in the middle of this thing you're trying to survive, right? So It's actually great in combination with the exercise, just for pulling you back into the present moment. I think it's really good. It saved my butt in grad school when I was stressed out and just didn't have enough time for anything. I still made time to go to the gym because that was kind of what kept me sane at the end of my master's. So man,
I couldn't agree more, man, because this has been like a crazy past couple months, man, with some stuff that going on with school and personal life, and I just been in the gym every single day. I kind of had to take a break because my wrist has been messed with me a little bit, so I kind of like had to take a couple of days off. But I can't I can't sit still. So like I'll have my brace on, get the class, take it off real hard, throw it back on real quick. Like it's like my body's not gonna know.
Dude, I broke a wrist one time when I was rolling. I probably trained for 6-7 months before I was gonna hit my first tournament up, and I broke my wrist the week before the tournament, and I had to pull out of the tournament. And you do not realize how much you use your wrist for stuff until you break one. I I eventually got back in the gym, and probably too soon, because I'd be going out to post on somebody's knee or frame on somebody, and my wrist would like shoot in pain. I'm like, okay, so there's probably a good 2 months in jiu-jitsu where I just didn't use one of my hands because I went back too fast and my wrist was hurting. It was not good, but it's fine now. But it was rough breaking something and getting injured. That's something you don't think about. Like a lot of people think like, oh, like the hard part of like exercise as a habit is like getting to the gym. But when you really get into the good habit of going to jiu-jitsu and then all of a sudden you're forced to stop for an injury, it's one of the hardest things ever to try to like deal with not being in the gym. Like, I'm not getting better right now. I'm not doing it's just, that's hard to like have to not, it's different when you have the option to go and the option to stay and be at home on the couch. But when you're not allowed to go because of an injury, that really sucks. And that's hard to cope with.
That sucks. And like you said, if you feel able-bodied to go and you don't go, it eats at you so much. Yeah. I'm like, okay, man, I got another hand. I don't need my left hand. Let's just go to the gym, bro.
I'll drill one arm rear naked choke.
Right. Right. I'll just work on my right side. Like, don't worry about my left. Like, because I had I'm trying to remember when I injured my wrist because I don't know. It was between an open mat class and just, I don't know, I must have moved it a weird way. Yeah. But like every so often, like my wrist will like kind of like start hurting or whatever. And it was just one day where I had no pain. It was like none at all. And I'm like, okay, I'm moving, I'm flexing and everything. I'm like, everything is good. Get to class, we're repping, and me and my wife is rolling, and she goes for a cutter pass. And I guess somehow when I went to my side and I tried to like brace, try to catch her leg from coming up, she somehow switched her hips and my wrist rolled. Yeah. And everything was on fire. I was like, oh God. I was like, damn it. So I had to play it off because she's like, you all right? I'm like, yeah. She's like, it's your wrist. I'm like, shut up. Let's go. I'm fine. I'll be all right.
Yeah, man. It's injuries suck, but you got to take care of yourself so long term you can be back in the gym and stuff.
Yeah. Like, we joke about this because we're so used to it, like the body pains and everything hurting. But like, recovery is just as important as training. So, don't, people who don't train, don't listen to us. Don't take our word for what it is. Take care of your body. Take care of your body.
Please do. And the thing, we say this to each other too, like, take the time off you need. We're checking on each other. When we get back in the gym, what's hurting still and stuff. I mean, I've had people come back to the gym after an injury and be like, I love you, Drew, but I'm not rolling with you until my leg's better. I'm like, I got it, man. I understand. I get it. I'm the biggest guy in the gym. I get it.
And we have a guy who's a purple belt, big guy, love him to death. But if he looks to me to roll, I'll check my body like, nope.
Not today, man.
I'll move a joint like, nope. Not today.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But Drew, man, we have a staple here at Talk Your Jits podcast, man. We make sure we ask everyone this question when you come on the show. Past or present, your top 3 people you would love to get to roll with.
Oh, man. Well, so for the biggest answer for me is obviously Gordon Ryan. So so Gordon and I, I'm just a blue belt guy from Texas, right? But he's got a very similar game to what I like, actually. I really, really like mount attacks, and he actually does a lot of those. And so mount and back attacks, and then some leg stuff as well. So it's actually interesting. So the more I study his game, the more detail, I actually match a lot with his style of heavy top pressure and then leg attacks from underneath and stuff. And so I think it'd be really cool to kind of just train with the best possible version of myself, which I think would be Gordon, like to train to basically what I could be if I were fully committed to this and stuff like that. I'm a bit bigger than him, but I've seen him in person. He's gigantic, so it would be fun. That would be probably my favorite role ever, to try to do that, and see what does the peak actually feel like? Like, what does it feel like to be rolling against the best person in the world? So I'd love to roll with him. I would also like to roll with, man, it'd be so interesting to go back into the past and roll with John Danaher when he was still rolling. That would be so interesting to see what he was like to roll with, because he hasn't rolled in a long time because of his knee injuries and stuff like that. So it'd just be cool to roll with somebody like that who you can't even roll with these days. Yeah. And then I think I'd also like to roll with Nicky Rod. He'd be an interesting guy to roll with. I'd just be so interested to roll with a guy who's kind of known for his athleticism and speed. And I just kind of like see what I could do against that and how much danger he would actually put me in submission wise. A lot of his game recently that I've seen is very focused on overtime rounds and rear naked strangles in overtime. And so I'd just be curious how much danger he could put me in as somebody who's a bit bigger than him, just based off pure athleticism. So I think that would be a really cool role as well. And then maybe like an honorable mention would be Merrick Ali or something like that. He'd be an interesting guy to roll with. He just got an Inoki, and so Nicholas Merrick Ali would be cool to roll with. So there's a lot of people, but I think those would be my ones that I'd roll with. So Gordon Ryan, John Danaher from the past when he could still roll, and Nicky Rod. I'd probably want to roll with them. That'd be fun.
Yeah, because you can just look at people like Danaher, and just from the wealth of knowledge that this guy has passed on to all these great jiu-jitsu world champions, and people are still flooding to learn from him. And it's like, man, I would love to see this guy in like action, like prime action. Like,
man,
the Danaher with hair.
Hair Danaher. Alternate dimension Danaher with knees that work. That would be that'd be a scary man. That would be very scary. So that would be really interesting. There's something kind of interesting about the sage that can't even do the stuff himself. He could barely walk, and then he's still sitting back here with his cane and stroking his beard, like teaching the best people in the world. It's really interesting. It's very movie-esque, I would say.
Right. I mean, just to have that level of understanding where you can pass on the knowledge without, I guess you want to say, physically having to do so. You can just speak it, and people are like, oh, all right, then boom.
It's really interesting. Yeah, he's a character, man. He's one of the most interesting people I think that I've heard talk, even outside of jiu-jitsu. He's an oddie, but he's an interesting person. Very, very interesting.
And it's funny. Like I was telling my wife, I tell my wife about this all the time about Danaher. Like when you hear him talk, that's how high his voice goes. He's just that one level. It's very, very monotone.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it is you can hear his voice over a crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, you
like,
can.
I think when he was when he had the match against Nicky with Nicky Rod, and people are like screaming and blah blah blah, and you just hear Danaher's small faint voice. Work again.
Yeah.
There you go. Let him get his in.
as we're talking about him, I'm reminded of another person that would for sure be on my list, which would be Big Dan. Do you know who Big Dan is? One of Danaher's guys. Yeah. He's terrifying, and I would like to roll with him just because I don't get to roll a lot with people bigger than me, and he's actually taller than me. And so it'd be really interesting to roll with a guy that is got a distinct size advantage on me. I probably weigh a bit more than him, but I don't get that often. There's very few people that are bigger than me, and they're also super technical. So that would be a really cool role for me to experience that. Because if you're 6'5" and as big as I am, the only people, it's very rare to find somebody bigger than me, and it's very rare to find someone bigger than me that is also very technical. And Dan is very technical, so it'd be good to roll with him as well.
And I like rolling with, I'm starting to fall in love with rolling with like the bigger, stronger guys. I'm only 5'10", so anything over that is a giant. And you're talking about, I would love to roll with someone bigger and stronger than me. Like, dude, you fighting mountains at this point. Like, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's not that skinny.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, man, I get that, man. It's like you want to feel that strength, you want to feel that power, and especially like you said, if they're technical about it, there's nothing more beautiful than like a big graceful guy.
Yeah.
So
I think the main thing is that the only time I run into people my size and weight is at tournaments, and that can't be the first time I'm running into that level of resistance, right? I need more experience of that in an environment where I can train with it frequently and get used to it rather than just seeing it once every 4 months, because that makes it really difficult to combat once I'm in a tournament setting.
Right. Yeah, I get it. I definitely get it, man. I definitely get it. Well, Drew, man, unless you got any other questions for me, man, fire away. If not, man, I would love for you to shout out your school, whatever you got coming up, whatever you're doing that you want the world to know, man. The floor is all yours.
Come by 10th Planet Dallas sometime. If people want to drop in, say hi. It'd be cool to see some people. I'm also a therapist, so I always ask people to make sure that they are checking in on their mental health and stuff like that. And please reach out to somebody if you need help. One of the things I often see is people that have people that want to help them, but they don't reach out, and then after a suicide attempt or something like that, they realize how much support they had, and it's good to just reach out for the support in the first place and make sure that you know that you're not alone. So reach out to somebody. If you don't have anybody, there's always 988, which is the National Suicide Hotline. If you need to talk to somebody, just make sure you're reaching out to people. There's a lot of people that want you to be here, even if they don't know you. So reach out and make sure that you're taking care of yourself.
Definitely, man. I can't agree more, man. Mental health is unfortunately one of those things that's still not taken as serious as it needs to be. And as a person who's an advocate for mental health, who suffer from that type like mental behavior, it's very, very important to get that outlet. If it's therapy, if it's jiu-jitsu, if it's both, So yeah, if you know somebody, like you said, reach out. There's always someone out there to talk to, and someone out there who understands what you're going through. Well, man, that is it. I would love to thank Drew one more time for coming on the show and blessing us with his jiu-jitsu knowledge. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please go and follow our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube page to stay updated on all future episodes. This has been Talk Your Jits podcast. Keep rolling, keep grinding, and remember, long live jiu-jitsu. Have a great day. All right, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you, man. This was a fun conversation. It's good to chat. I'll have to send some people your way to check out your stuff. This is a cool thing that you're doing. I really appreciate you're doing this for the community. It's really cool, man.
Man, thank you so much.